All right, we finished our harvest with this little 7300 combine, and I get tons of comments about it in the comments on the videos, so I'm going to try to make a video answering some of the questions and do some of the history on the 7300 combine. So that's what we'll do right after this. Welcome back. If you haven't seen my videos before, I'm Ross the Oliver Man. This is the 7300 cheapest combine I ever bought, which needs to be cleaned up now that it's been to the field. But yeah, we bought this last year on an auction, kind of a last minute deal. I think it was in December when I bought it, and I've been messing with it ever since. Got it running and, you know, got it together enough to go to the field. So lots of questions are asked about it all the time, and basically I guess I'm gonna try to keep this somewhat organized. I've got some notes I wrote down on my phone here to try to... Buddy, how you doing? There you are. Anyway, I got some notes written down in order to try to get through this information in a way that's gonna make sense. But this machine is not, in fact, an Oliver, a true, I guess you would say, lots of people would say, not a true Oliver design, because this combine was built in Canada at the Cockshut factory. And what it amounts to is, okay, before that, Oliver's combine factory was in Battle Creek, Michigan. And that's where they built their combines happily for years, the pull-type combines, the self-propelleds. Some of their self-propelleds actually were painted red and sold as Fords. And so I think the last combine, which I'm not up on that, all of that, because we never had any around here at all, but the last combine that I believe they were making at the time was the 25, the Oliver 25. I'll try to put pictures in so you can see what it looks like. And if you look at one of those combines up close, they used a lot of the production tractor parts and stuff where they could, you know, same steering wheels and different things. And some of the older combines even used the same throttle quadrant like on the fleet lines and stuff. So those were the actual, I guess you would say, Oliver built combines. And so by about, let's see, what would it have been? Probably about the 60s. Yeah, it was in the 60s when White Motor came into the picture, you know, that basically they ended up buying Oliver because it was sold to the highest bidder when a couple guys got a controlling stake in the shares and sold it. And so in order to update the line, I guess at the time the Battle Creek plant was probably, you know, getting kind of outdated, or probably just needed a lot of work done to it because it had been cranking out machinery for years and years and years. And so White Motor's solution was, why not just buy Cockshut, because they had a combine factory up there that was making, at the time, state-of-the-art combines. So that's what they ended up doing. And I'm not sure, I've heard stories, I don't know anybody who, if there's anybody left who really worked there at that time, but I don't know how about they ended up acquiring Cockshut. I don't know that they were a welcome acquisition, or that, I don't know that Cockshut was really happy about it, but it happened. So it seems that wherever they went, White Motor was not necessarily appreciated, at least at first. So anyway, now White owns Oliver and Cockshut, which consequently, another fun fact about the Cockshut being brought into the family of stuff, not just for the combines, but the name spears on the 4-digit tractors that say, you know, taper. If they hadn't bought Cockshut, we wouldn't have that, because that was a Cockshut thing. That was on the 3-digit Cockshut tractors, like the 540, 550, 560, 70, 80. They had that name spear Oliver, at the same time this was happening, had the checkerboard decals like my 1800A, and even the 500 had that checkerboard thing going on. So that was another thing that came with the cockshut deal. But anyway, so they bought the combine factory by buying cockshut, essentially, and that's where they started selling Oliver combines. At the time that the combines were being produced, or that this merger happened, this combine was not in existence yet as the 7300. It basically was in existence as something else, because if I look at my notes here I took, because this I'm not up on, when they were building, when the merger happened, Cockshut was making the 430 and 431 combines. And well, if you saw comments on this channel before, Eli comments on several videos all the time, and he actually has some of those 430 or 431 combines. Maybe both, I'm not sure. He's got several of them. He just sent a message the other day that he got another one bought or something. There were never any of those, to my knowledge, down here at all. I've never seen any anywhere, but I have seen a bunch of these, what I call 500 series combines, but we'll talk about that in a second. So 430, 431 combines were what was in production. And so whenever Oliver came into the mix, why, you know, they first started selling Oliver 430 and 431 combines, but that numbering system didn't really make sense with what Oliver had been doing with combines. You know, they had like the model 15, model 18 pull types, and then 25, 35 type setup was their numbering system. And the last combine was the 25, I believe. So the next variation when they came out with these body style combines, I will say, was the 525, 535, and 545. I have a 545. You've seen it in another video. It's sitting in the shed, and that's what we had and I grew up on all the time. So this combine, essentially a 7300, is the identical same combine as a 535. It's just a different era of time with some improvements made, of course, along the way. So the 535 is, and I believe that the 535 was basically the same combine as like the 430. It was the same size machine. Obviously very different configuration on it. When you see the pictures of that, you'll see what I'm talking about. But so that's what led to that numbering system, what I call the 500 series combines, and that's what I consider this to be, even though it's a 7300. It's a 535, just updated a little bit. So it was the middle size in that lineup, 525, 535, 545. You know, basically they just added a straw walker and made everything wider each time. And a lot of the parts interchange on the different models. That was what I liked about having more than one, was that all of the long ways parts, like this way, were the same. The only difference was the parts that went crossways, you know. So then later on, as time progressed, like in the 70s, which would have been the era of the 55 series tractors, you know, the 500 series combines were the era of the 50 series tractors, you know, the mid 60s in there. 69 came out the 55 series, and then probably about, I think it was in the, like, it wasn't right away. It was probably like 72, 3, 1, somewhere in there. They updated and came out with 7,000 series combines. So then this thing, instead of being the middle, became the small combine in the lineup. You ended up with the 7300 and a 7600 and a 7800, I believe. There were several 7600s around here, but never I don't know that I've ever seen a 7800 around here. But those combines, the 76 and 78, are basically the same similar body style design as to like my cousin's 8900. That sort of evolved with that design, where you had the engine next to the cab and what have you. So this went from being the middle thing to being the smaller guy in the lineup at that time. And like I said, basically the same identical thing as a 535. So when this was a 535, I think that it was only available with the 6-cylinder engine. There was a 6-cylinder Chrysler engine, and then if you got up to like the 545 like we had, 6-cylinder was standard, but V8 was optional. And so this combine actually has the same motor that's in the 545, because by the time we got to the 7000 series combine, the V8 became the power plant of choice for this 7300. There are some green ones out there with the Perkins, 6354 Perkins. Probably not as common as the gas engine. And even later on, my red 7300, because I have 2 of these, remember, the red one has a diesel, and by that time, I don't know, the diesel was becoming more common, but there still were a lot more gas ones, I think, made than diesels. And in the book, when you read it, the gas engine actually is the higher horsepower option than that diesel, if I remember right, when you read in the book. So if you wanted the highest power horse you could get, you got it with this V8 gas 318 industrial Chrysler. It's I think rated around 100 horsepower. Chrysler experts can correct me on that if I'm wrong. So the cylinder, which I'm going to take you to the red one, and we'll take a look at more of that again. I kind of explained how these worked, but combines are kind of figured on like the width of the cylinder, and the cylinder of the 7300 is 34 inches wide, and it's like, I think this is where I made my notes, 22 inches in diameter, which is the same exact measurements as the 535 or the 430. So that's the way that was made. I'm not sure how they do their measurements for everything else, but the separator area size, it says, is 34 by 130 inches, and the total separating area is 4420 square inches. So I guess they're measuring the internal guts to tell you how much space you have for the grain to get separated as it's on its trip out, like we talked about. And basically, the more area you have for separation, the better job it's going to do, because it's got more chances to do what it's supposed to do and go where it's supposed to go. Okay, let's see here. What other specs do we need to know on this sucker? Well, the fuel tank was the same on either one. It sits over here, and it is around 50 gallons. I think it's an odd, like 51 gallons maybe, but they sit there. I want to say that some of the combines later, the bigger ones, had 2 of these tanks, and it was the same tank. But all these 500 series ones, to my knowledge, use this same thing just like this. So we have that. What other specs do I have written down here on my notepad? Okay, grain tank. That's another thing that's interesting and obviously different about them. So the 430 was the same as the 535, which is the same as this, but it had a much different style grain tank, and it would only hold 60 bushels. And the 535 and the 7300 standard had 75 bushels, and you could get extensions that bolted in up there, and you could make it 100 bushels. And I have seen some of the combines where the guys have put more than one extension on, which is that centerpiece there, and really stepped it up there, which I don't know how that would be exactly. But, you know, then of course you got to get a longer belt for your cross auger there. But that's how they did it back in the day, and I'm sure guys probably made their own little hopper extensions and stuff up there. But that was a thing. Oh, and then like I talked about on the when we were using it, they had a pretty good size unloading auger. It's a 10-inch auger, it could be overwhelmed, at least on the big one. I don't know so much on these that I've ever had that problem, but what I'm saying is, once you start unloading, you better keep unloading till you're empty, because if you shut it off with a full tube full of stuff, it's probably not going to start back up again because of the load. It just can't overcome it. Then you need to open your auger up like this and let it spill out the top, and then you're good to go. We've had to do that on the 545 several times, but it's got a whole lot longer auger on it, so that's how that goes. Oh, what else do we want to talk about? We can talk about, we need to go look at the red one so you can see some of the differences in stuff. The big thing, I guess, that you would say was the difference between the 535 and the 7300s was these had the quick switch feeder house, which the 500 series combines did not, and I can show you that on the other two. The 500 series combines, the feeder house was part of the machine, and you took it loose back here. You pull this pin and this block comes out, and then it had jack stands, and you just back the whole machine away, which is actually how the feeder house is off of my red one. And I did it the same way. Took it loose and left the feeder house attached to the head. And there were different variations of the quick switch latches. The green ones mainly use this style that operates from out here, and the red one uses a different style that's under there. Another interesting fact, I suppose, about these, like the heads will fit like the 8900 that my cousin's got. However, in order to use them, you have to change on those red heads the position where you put the latch pins in. If I remember, it's opposite of what you would think. You put them to the wider position for the smaller combine and the narrow position for the wider combine. And I don't know if I can show you that if I have a head that's off of something that we can look at. We'll have to see how good that works. But anyway, the nice thing about this is you just unhook from the head with a couple latches, and you know, there's a coupler that you slide on, which it's over here on this little one. Some heads drive from both sides, some only drive from one side. This is a tiny one, so it drives from one side. So you slide your collar off of here, and then that shaft stays at the combine, and this short shaft is the, you know, stays with the head, and there you go. So it really cut down the time of what it would take. I don't think it wasn't really that bad to take the heads off the other one, because I've done that. As long as you have a good level place that you're working, that you can get it exactly right, you can drive away from it, put it back in. I've done it several times and no big deal. But if you had uneven terrain you're working on or whatever, forget it. You aren't going to have, this is a much easier setup. And like I said, one coupler and you're pretty well done. 2 latches. The transmission in these is a 3-speed transmission. 3 speeds forward, 1 speed reverse. I've got it out of that red one so we can take a look at that. You can see what it looks like. Basically, it's a very simple thing. It's not a hydrostat. It's a gear drive combine. 3 speeds forward, 1 reverse. But then you have your variable speed unit, which I talked about the other day, which then essentially gives you an infinite range in each of the gears, because you can change how tight this pulley squeezes on that belt, and it will either ride up higher or lower, and then the front pulley will match what you've got going on, because the belt is always a set length. And so you know, if it's lower down in there, that would be like having a small pulley here and a large pulley there. If it's the belt's all the way to the top here, it'd be like having a large pulley here and a small pulley up there, which would make it go faster, you know. So kind of a neat idea. They do kind of slip, especially if you get into really muddy conditions. I've had that trouble. I've also had the trouble where I learned you need to buy the Agco brand belts for that, because if you don't, the ones even from the rubber shop just didn't seem to be as good or precise as the other ones. So anyway, you could of course change your row spacing a little bit if you're worried about widths. There were spacers between the axle and the final drives you could put in there. I've got some on the other combines. This one doesn't have any, so it's set up about as narrow as you could get it, because obviously you'd be rubbing something if you were any narrower than that. I was trying to see though what the cost of this thing was when it was new. I thought I wrote that down. I think that the last price, this is a corn and soybean special, and I did find that. The corn and soybean special price, $17,160. $17,160. I gave $600 for this one, so I think I'm doing pretty good. And 19, somebody asked how long they were produced. So they were produced from like 72, I think, until 1980. But there were probably some left over because in price books it was still listed in like 82. But the price in 1982, which would have been 2 years after they quit making them, for the ones that were on hand was $33,316. But then like an 8700, which would have been, you know, the mid-range combine, it was listed at $66,000. So that's kind of, I'm sure that it was probably even more than that if they still had some on hand. I bet that they got into the 40,000 range maybe by the time they got rid of them all, because I mean they made them green and then later they were red. I want to see, somebody asked the question, when did they switch to red? 1976 probably is about when they, 75 to 76 was when they sort of, Oliver was going away and then white was coming into the picture. They kind of did it gradually. The 2255 was the last green tractor to roll off the assembly line. So I would say it's a safe bet that from 72, 3, 4, and 5, so that would be what, 4 years, 2, 3, 4, 5, they were probably green, and then after that they were red up until, so from 75 and a half or 76, let's say, to 1980, they were red. The cabs on them, that's another interesting thing I guess we can talk about real quick. On the 545 I have, it has a sticker in the cab that says it's a George White cab. That's the name of the company that made it. I don't know that that's any connection to White Motor Company. It just happens to be the name of the company. I have seen different brands of cabs on these combines, but this is the George White style cab that's on the 7300 here. It's the same one that's on my, actually I can't say that. I want to say on my red one it says it's a Tiffin cab. We'll have to go look at that in a minute when we go look at it. But basically, it's just a simple little combine, and you know, they kept it around for the smaller farmers in the line, because when you jump up, there's a lot of difference between this and like a 8700, you know. So this was a simple little machine and a lot more cost effective. If the last price really was 40-some thousand or whatever I said, I don't even remember, you know, 33,000, I think I said 33,000 to 66,000, that's half price of the next combine that was available. So that's probably why they sold so many of these little fellers. Plus they were familiar. I mean, guys, if they had already had a 500 series combine, you'd feel right at home. So when they came out with this and called it the 7300, and the literature says it's all, you know, new, it's not really new. It's just a new number on something that they made already, but tried and true performance. So I think I covered a lot of the basics of operation the other day in the other video, but we can go look at that red one and I'll explain a little bit more. But you know, your feeder house here, and then you just drive into the head and hook the head up. So the feeder house stays with the machine, and there's just slat chains in there that grab the crop and pull it up in there and then dump it in the cylinder, which we can definitely see on that red one because the feeder house is off. They got this door so you can open up and get in there to clean out if you clog or have trouble. You know, you can work on it here a little bit. It appears that somebody's put newer bars in this one, so that's kind of handy. But anyway, I need to clean this out because the door won't close. I didn't even realize that my latches were not. Under that cover is the cylinder, which you'll see in that red one in a second. And basically, what else is there to talk about? Before we walk down and look at the red one, we can go in the cab just to give you some idea of the layout. I don't think I really got any good cab shots of it. You've seen the engine multiple times, but very familiar layout here on the Oliver combines. Your tower here, which has all of your gadgetry in it, your gauges, charging, oil, water, 3-speed shifter, choke, your throttle. It has a bump up for a little bit more than idle there, and then wide open. and whatever. Key switch on the gas one, it does more stuff obviously than the diesel, and then I have it wired up where on all of them the key turns on the clicky clack pump, your button for your starter, and you've got your 3 levers here. This does your head height. This is for your variable speed, to speed it up or slow it down. These are for your reel. If you have a grain table on, you can raise your reel up or down. And then this has this little thing is hooked up to on some of the heads, and it'll bounce up and down and tell you to raise the head, and some of them you can set it where it'll do it for you and stuff. The red combine, I've got some more stuff in there, we can look at that, but that's basically the gist of it. I forgot light switch there. This one actually has a cigarette lighter, which that's asking for trouble probably on a combine full of dry stuff. Here's your concave adjustment you could do from the cab, and it would change the clearance of 1/2 of your concave. I can talk about that in a minute when we go down. The other half you had to do manually out there, but a lot of times you could just leave the other side and just adjust it in here. This one was doing an excellent job, so it's set about right. I'd have to read up now to remember what the settings were, but for corn it was doing a handy job. Then you have your 2 levers here. This one is your machine engagement. You pull up on that, it slams that idler into that flat belt that we changed on the machine. And then you know, if you can see that, you remember we did that in the video. This one does is your head declutch. It only does something when the rest of the machine's running. So when that machine's running, this one engages the head, so you can shut it on and off independently and let the thresher keep running to finish if you're at the end row. This lever here is the grain tank unloader, and basically, like I said, you pull it up to make it start unloading, and then if you turn it sideways, it will shut off those cross augers, and the cross augers bring the grain over to dump it in so that it leaves. So I don't really know why it was a big deal to be able to shut that off. I guess to let it empty what was in there first, maybe, if you had a really wet crop or something, so that you didn't overwhelm the unloading auger. I don't know. Same tilt wheel and stuff like on the 50 series tractors, where you could spin the knob and pull the thing out. You know, that's kind of neat. Later on they did away with that. And then your very dust blowing air unit, which just draws air from right out here and blows it in your face through a filter that mice probably eat out, because that's usually the way it was on ours. I mean, they pretty well ate the filter up all the time, so you weren't in a it wasn't very clean air hitting you in the face. Oh, there's the sticker, George White cab, and that tells you dependable since 1857, London, Canada, the finest quality line. All right, now hopefully there's enough light that we don't run out of it in the dark, but we can go look at the old red one, and then you can see more stuff of the guts. I need to probably go get the flashlight. Here, of course, is your operation for your header declutch. See, while that machine's spinning, then this belt, when you pull that second lever, tightens, and then it makes the head run and whatever. There's a lot of times, like when using it, I was pretty good about, if you could see that it was going to start to choke up, and you could jam and shut the head off real quick and let it clear the cylinder, because it would get a big slug, and then you wouldn't end up plugging the combine up. If you could shut the head off and let the machine run, you were all right. So anyway, but oh, another thing that was optional on these, now that I'm jumping all around and nonsense, 2 different style things. Of course, corn heads had a lot more weight, so you had to have something to keep the back end of the combine on the ground. This one has wheel weights put into the actual wheels, which is a different setup than we always had, and I'll show you that when we go to the 545. They made a kit that bolted to the axle and then used tractor weights, like the base and the stack weights. So anyway, we'll go look at the other combines now and get you some more idea of what's going on. All right, well, we're talking about weights, so I'm not jumping around too much. Here's the deal. It's a flat plate with some U-bolts that bolts to it, and then you could use the base weights. For some reason, when I was a kid, Grandpa got aggravated and said it was too heavy. So he took one of those base weights off, and I can't find it back. I have no idea where it is, unless it went down in the dirt and it's buried somewhere here, and I just can't find it anymore. So just this spring, as a matter of fact, I was talking to my buddy Stuart, who comments on the videos, and he doesn't live too far from here. He's got Olivers and Whites. He's got a green 7300 actually. And he came up to buy some weights. He asked if I had some weights I'd sell, and I said, yeah, I can hook you up with a set. So we were talking about weights. He said, well, I almost bought one the other day, but it didn't have any holes in it. And I said, really? I said, I'd like to have that, because I said, I got someplace that I need one of those. So he came back up again sometime, and he brought that other weight. We just need to put it on here, and then it's back to the way it's supposed to be. You can put the regular base weight on, and I've seen guys bolt flat weights on the back of it. My cousin with the white combines has that set up on his 7300, white base weights and stack weights. So there have you. You know, this is one walker wider than the 7300. This is the 545, obviously, but very much everything's the same, except it's got a super duper longer unloading auger that weighs a ton, and to try to get it pulled up over center is a trick sometimes. That is another issue that needs fixed. When I was using it the last time, I hit a bump in the field, and it bounced and it broke one of the tension cables, and then it twisted this all a little bit in this hinge setup. So we're gonna have to do some doctoring on that to get it back where it's supposed to be. Probably need to fold it out and get it how it needs to be. And then I got new springs and found all kinds of stuff, but we're gonna have to give that some loving before we go again with this one. It's got the same George White style cab like the 7300s did, because basically, you know, the 7300 was just one of these updated, a 535 I should say. So I've been cleaning up around, trying to get stuff under the shed and make more room, because I got a lot of room if I just do it right. And I got this combine shoved forward a little bit and got a whole nother tractor under here. So but it is apart because of that transmission, but you can see it's identical, with the exception of, I'm pretty sure that is a different brand of cab. We can climb up there and see if I can do it without killing myself, because I've got stuff in both hands, see, is what I'm saying. I really want to get this going now. That was part of the reason I moved it, because I want to work on it. I want to get it going again. I had so much fun with that green one that I miss doing this with this combine too. So we're gonna get this going and hopefully run some beans with it. Tiffin cab, that's what I thought, but basically the same design. You can leave it in the comments. Maybe you know, did Tiffin buy out the George White company, and that's why? I don't know. By this time we have the steering set up like on the 55 series tractors. However, they did away with the telescope feature, and the same exact layout. Of course, everything's covered with bean dust in here, because hey, beans are dusty. When you're combining beans with this sucker, I don't care what you do, it's gonna get in here. You think I should drink this nasty old cab Mountain Dew that's been in here for like 8 years? Probably not. Same layout there. This one has the handle on it for if you had a hydraulic reel, which was an option later on. I've never really, what I'm saying is, they're out there, but why? Why would you need that? You really don't. You can, I've had just as much luck with the manual, and it's less trouble. I had some friends who ran 38900s for years, and they said that the hydraulic reel setup could be troublesome at different times. So anyway, that's how that goes. I guess the only other noteworthy feature I didn't mention on the other one was back in the corner there, that cap, if I can reach it, that is where you put your hydraulic oil in. And so thus, if you aren't very careful, you will make a mess, and then you will attract more fuzz over everything, which looks almost like that might have been what happened to me, huh? But anyway, not important. Fire extinguishers. I learned to mount one of those on a combine, you know. And Grandpa was on me one time here a while back. He wanted me to bring in the house all the fire extinguishers out in these combines because they were just going to waste sitting in the combine all year. And I said, no. I said, I kind of like having them out there because if I'm outside and something catches fire, I know that there's one in there and I can run over and maybe grab it and save something. Whereas if I had to run all the way to the house, that might not be the case. Can a guy get down off of here without killing himself one-handed? Well, probably not. See? A guy, even in preparation of doing this, went out and bought some more metal trays and organized all his hardware that was laying around here. Because when I started moving it, I noticed I had stuff laying everywhere. So for what I had to do to this one, I had to take the transmission out because something was not right. And I thought it was in the transmission. That's the far one there. This is the transmission out of it, which it's just a transmission, your bell housing with a clutch fork in it, and then your brakes are made into the transmission there, and then it connects via spline coupler shafts to your final drives in the wheels there. And so that's on that end, and then there's this that faces out, and then this bolts to it, which actually has your pressure plate and clutch in it, and then your variable speed spring pulley, which matches whatever you have the hydraulic one set at. And I took it out thinking that the transmission was bad, and I was in a rush. It was harvest time, it had been miserable, it was raining, and I wasn't having any luck. I was getting stuck. And so what I intended to do, I had just, when I was doing wheat, the bearing had went out of this. That's why the paint's kind of burned off there. I had to get that bearing out of there. And I had that totally disassembled. And I got it back and running. I've been running beans with it through the mud and all this and having a heck of a time. And then the weather got where it was going to rain for a bunch of days, like a week. So I pulled it back over here and I said, I want to take the head off and I want to put, I wanted to take these cylinder bars out and take them to Trimp and Seymour and have him hard surface them because they're pretty well had. I mean, they're not, they could be a lot better. And when I went to back away from the head, the machine popped and it wouldn't move anymore. And I thought that I broke something in the transmission. I called to a combine salvage yard up north. They had a transmission. I sent Dad after it. I said, just go get it. I said, I'm going to need parts, so go get it. And, well, when I got this one here and got to looking at it, I don't see anything wrong with my original one. This one acts exactly the same way as the other one does. I held all kinds of shafts, and I never did find anything that concretely proves to me that it is the transmission. So then I got to thinking about it, and I thought, well, maybe this has sheared a key off in it. It has like a square key in it, if I remember right. And I'm wondering if it's like half sheared where under the machine power it slips, but now by hand I can't physically turn it. I can't overcome that, but the machine could, and that's where the trouble is. So I'm tempted to tear that apart first and see, but we can go over this again one day and just see if we can find something. Either there's nothing wrong with my transmission, or both of these transmissions are bad, is the conclusion where I'm at right now until I go back to it. But anyway, I was so frustrated that year that's why I got somebody to finish cutting my soybeans. Then I mudded out the rest of the corn, and then all those things broke. The snout on the head and the chain broke, and then that auger. And I finished corn with 3 rows on this combine. And I just, after that, started hiring people to do it because it was just so much less stress if all I had to do was be the trucker and run stuff back and forth. But I do want these combines to run so that I can play with them, or in the case like this year, my cousins broke something, I could keep going, even though it would take longer with my smaller combine. But I had a lot of fun just playing with it for when I knew I didn't have to rely on it. But anyway, so here's the cylinder. As if I can stick the, I think this is a magnet light. Yeah, this is the light from a viewer that I think viewer Michael sent me that way back when. But here you see your cylinder, 22-inch diameter, and it's got, I think, 8 bars on it. They're in matched pairs so that it doesn't vibrate. So when you put these together, there's several things. There's lefts and rights with the way they're cut, but also they need to be put in opposites, balanced pairs. Like this one and the one on the back side are a match set, and you need to make sure that's right. Otherwise, it'll be crazy with vibration. So anyway, you can tell I was kind of over it when I did this because it's not even cleaned up. It's still just like it was the day I walked away from it. But anyway, cylinder there. Down in here, which is totally plug full, is the stone trap, which is meant to catch stuff if you have a rock come up the head and it would drop down in, and then you could dump it with that little lever there, and you dump it onto the grain pan. Well, wherever that lever is. Oh, this big long lever there. I guess I already dumped it. But this lever, oh, there we go, yeah. So anyway, you dump your stone trap onto the grain pan, and then it shakes the rocks and stuff out the back, is the idea. I don't have rock trouble, so that's not as big of a problem for me. But what's neat about this is now you can see the way this combine works. In that other video where I explained how it goes, comes in there, goes into this cylinder, and then it feeds through the bottom here, and there is your concave. It's got holes in it, you see, and so the crop rubs between here and this, and then that just kind of peels it off, and then the grain falls through these holes onto the grain pan and shakes its way out the back. Some of the crops, you could put blank out plates in between here so there wasn't a big gap so crop couldn't go through. But basically, you're going to be feeding that feeder house, is going to dump it right into here, and it's just going to go around, and it's going to flip up, and it's going to hit, well, you know what I'm saying. It's going to go over the edge, and then your trash and stuff is going to go on the straw walkers and go out, and the heavy stuff's going to fall down and then go through the rest of the machine like we talked about the other day. I got this so well stacked in here, I don't know if I'm going to... This one has a tin, which I don't know why they ever did that, probably for cost cutting. But it has a tin or metal unchoker hub, and it just doesn't last. It's broken. It was broken when I got it, and I welded it, and I broke it again. I need to get an older one, a cast one, off something else. But you got to pull that off, and then you can pull this sprocket off to change your cylinder speeds. Like I said, here's all the different sizes you could have. Yeah, I've got them all. But you put those on and make her go. And then you could also, they also fit back there, which is the beater shaft. That basically, what that is, which one of these days I guess I'll gut a combine so you can see it in there, but it comes through the cylinder, and then that beater shaft hits the material, like the stalks and stuff. Like in the case of soybeans, it would still have the pod hulls and stuff on them. And that's just one last resort to hammer the crop out of the plant in case it missed some, and then the grain can drop down and what have you. The beater shaft is what drives this machine. On the other side, that is what is connected to that gigantic metal pulley, that aluminum pulley like on that belt we replaced, comes through here, and then it drives the cylinder. So if you get the machine plugged up, what you can do sometimes to help yourself so you're not turning the whole machine backwards, you can take the chain off the cylinder and unplug your cylinder by just turning this, because that's happened. I've gotten it plugged before where it was you were having enough time to unplug just the cylinder. You didn't want to have to try to overcome all of the stuff, because when you're turning this backwards, you're turning the whole machine backwards. All the walkers, everything is connected together. So yeah, you don't want that to go. There is your see-through to see the clearance of the backside of the cylinder concave. Like I said, I'm running out of hands here. Here is your bottom of your cylinder right there, and your rasp bar, and then here is your concave, the backside of it. So there's how you can measure your clearance to see, you know, what you got. I got not even 2 fingers of clearance. She's a... I was gonna make a joke, but I won't. She's a 2-finger kind of gal there. And then somewhere or another around here, which is caked with dirt, I'm sure. Oh, there it is. That concave goes all the way up to here, and then here is your adjustment where you can adjust this backside and close that down a little bit if you need to. And then your front handle in the cab adjusts the front clearance through that mechanism there, and there's 2 holes you can pick from, and it's eccentric, and it'll, you know, so you could have the front tighter than the back where it's has to really squeeze to come in and then it goes out easier, or you could have it the other way. Just different things require different settings. I see that I did not open my door on there, so that's probably about routed out. And I also see that I did this one backwards of the one I just did. I have the other one hinged differently, but yeah, that may be, we may be redoing that, because that may be toast, although that's a lot thicker steel than what they originally were. But this red one is the same as the green one, with the exception that this red one's a diesel, and everything is identically the same. Even got a clicky clack pump put on it, and trying to get out from back here. This one does not have original style weights on it. The guy before me had welded this bracketry on there, right there, so that he could hang white suitcase weights on it. And I did not have any of those at the time. And I had a whole bunch of these Gleaner weights that were on that combine that burnt. So I welded a couple pieces to it and used it where I could use the Gleaner weights on it that I had. No big deal. But this combine had a straw chopper, which all of the straw choppers were made by Heston. So they were the same on all the combines, basically. That's what I'm saying. I keep seeing stuff now that I want to address, and it's not time yet. But the straw chopper, you have to bolt on that double pulley up there on that beater shaft, and then it has this big pair of V-belts back here, which I'm not so sure that they weren't double banded at one time and they've just worn down that far. That could be. But at any rate, it goes there to this idler shaft deal, and you can see the thin clearance you have there. And then you got a couple speeds here for your belt to your chopper, and then it goes through these pulleys, corresponding speeds, and then your chopper bolts on. I took my chopper off, and I don't remember why, but it might have been because I shredded the belt, and it might be that that's the belt there. I think that's the long traction drive belts. I've got belts, but I don't know. That's a variable speed belt. Honestly, I don't know why I got rid of that one. It's probably cracked or something. I don't know. Now it won't stay up there. But anyway, I know I shredded one chopper belt, so maybe that's why. But I need to go get it and put it under the here with the machine so that it's here. But it's basically the same. Oh, I see I left this little pan in. You have to have this in when you have the chopper in, or it won't feed the material into the chopper. This combine has had a rough go before I got it, and this is a good example. When you're in corn, you want to take those retractable knives out of the chopper, because if you don't, the pieces of cob and stuff will beat the end of these walkers to death. And that's what's happened here. You know, well, do I have a chopper laying here handy? Probably not where we can see. There is a chopper down there, but anyway, there's two sets of knives on a chopper, the kind that are on the drum that rotate in pairs of 3, and then there's what they call retractable knives that you can set how the clearance is. And when you're in beans, you can have them pretty well all the way in and just shred it up like into fine powder. But when you're in stuff like corn stalks, it will beat the tar out of stuff. There's another shot of the inside. You can see the cylinder way up there in front, and the grain pan is the thing looking at us with the fingers sticking out. And then your chaffer's here, and it falls down through there to the bottom. And then there's those two augers that we talked about the other day. And then that's how she works. And like I said, I've had one of these machines totally gutted. I've worked on about every piece of them over life's way, and I can't say as I really enjoy being wadded up inside one, but I have been before. So anyway, this combine definitely has a chopper. The 545 I have has the stuff on it for the chopper, but we didn't get the chopper with it, but I think that one from the Gleaner will fit it. That's why I kept it. And I have a couple more choppers that I got from salvage and stuff. I think I could make a chopper for it if we get to that point, but in corn you really don't need it. I found it's harder on the machine than it's worth. I just as soon go bush hog it up later or whatever. But anyway, so that's more about these. The 545 here is actually, it's got the corn kit on it, which has some extra accessories like this guard, the full fan guard over it. That was a thing you could get back in the era of these 500 series ones. And it was a corn machine, and then perforated doors, of course. It's got a different type of non-adjustable shaker there. It's just rigid. You can't adjust it. You got the back little section, but that was a corn thing. And then all of these risers on there, and then my rubber curtain, which is almost not existent anymore, I see. So that's another thing we can service. But it had that rubber, it's like a grain retarding curtain to slow it down when that beater, you can see the beater up there on this one, just that metal drum with metal paddles on it, and it'll fling the crop into that. Nichols and Shepard called that the man behind the gun, and that's what saved your crop. It didn't sling it onto the walkers, it hit that thing first and dropped down so that your grain would fall, and that's how that went. I should say, whilst I'm on that topic, when we were talking about where the combines came from, the reason that the Oliver combine factory was in Battle Creek, Michigan, was because they bought Nichols and Shepard in 1929 when they merged. And the 4 flag logo you've seen, you know, Nichols and Shepard, American Seeding Machine Company, Oliver Oliver Plows, and Hartpar, and they became the Oliver tractor, you know, that we know today. But those were the 4 companies they bought, and so that gave them a combine line, a seeding tool line, and all that. And that basically just the respective factories were where those implements were made. So Battle Creek was making harvesters, and the American seeding place, I think, was in, where was it, Springfield, Illinois? I'd have to look that up. And did like the planters and stuff like that, and so on and so forth. So that's how that came to be back from those days. So anyway, I hope that this video has answered some of your questions. It may be not the best quality video here at the end in the dark, but with the daylight the way it is, it's the best we can do. But anyway, I fully have intentions and plans to get this red one back up and running again, and even the 545 behind me. It will take a lot less than this one will, but I want this done. I had so much fun playing with that green one. I want to have this one ready so I can do some beans with it and stuff, or whatever, wheat even, and that's what I want to do. So yeah, that's the plan. And as always, if you enjoyed the videos, give them a thumbs up, leave a comment. That stuff doesn't cost you anything, and it sure helps me out. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.